On this week's GTA 6 o'clock, the moon points to trailer 2.
Trailer 1 was teased in a similar way like this last year.
A GTA Online update brings in new features.
There was a very small but important note that said,
and our reaction to last week's interview.
Would Rockstar be considering a VR version of GTA 6?
It's all here on this week's GTA 6 o'clock. Hello and welcome to episode 48 of GTA 6 o'clock, the world's most in-depth and best connected GTA 6 show. And this week's episode is an interesting one because just after you listen to this, the Take-Two investor call will be taking place. So, Dan, this episode will go out as normal at 6 p.m. GMT, but the call is set for 9:30 p.m. GMT. So far, at the time of recording, we've had no news from Rockstar about any new assets. So, what do we think this means? Will we get another reiteration of their fall 2025 release date in the call? Or something a little bit more cryptic now it's getting close to that perceived release date? Your thoughts?
I don't know. And
Okay.
that's why you tune into GTA 6 o'clock. There's not been much to suggest anything either way. My not that confident prediction is that they're going to just reassert the date and be business as usual. And if there is any allusion to there being a new trailer, like someone, probably an analyst, will ask about when can we expect to see more from the game. And they will say something like,
It's still on track.
Excited to share this when it's ready to be shared, or shortly we look forward to sharing new assets or something like that. They won't give away too much. That's not really their place. It's a finance and investors call. So they're just there to provide guidance and reassurance that the money payday is coming, and at the time people expect it to. And it's difficult for us because I feel a bit like delivering this podcast an hour or two before the financial call feels a little bit like reporting on a football match that hasn't happened, but is just about to as you speak. So it's a difficult one for us, I think.
We can only expect that everything will carry on the same. And that's probably what will happen in this show. We're just expecting that the 2025 fall release date will continue to hold for now. And then we will see what happens, I guess. The only thing that I think people have caught onto is today, which is Tuesday as we record this, would be the day, if they were going to put anything out, that they would put something out ahead of the call. And, it's still UK time and US time right now, too early for that to happen. Normally those drops would be as the West Coast wakes up, which is normally about 5 p.m. UK time.
And as we discussed last week, I guess the critical thing today that I think is a shadow over all world events is it's the US election day. And so the chances of them delivering assets today, I would say, are nil. Unless they were genuinely looking to provide the world with some light relief. It just, I don't see it.
Yeah. So if it's not today, if nothing happens, what we'd expect to happen is that we just, like I said, they will reiterate a fall 2025 release date for now. If there was going to be any question of a delay, you wouldn't really expect that announcement to come in a call like this, especially not explicitly, and it'll probably be later on down the line anyway that they go, it's February, March now. We know the game was meant to come out fall. We now think we need extra time to push it down the line.
The obvious telltale sign is if guidance changes to the tune of $1.7 billion.
Yes.
Because there aren't many things in their schedule that can account for that. And if it's that scale of guidance change, they have to explain it. And it will be obvious even without saying what it is. So that's the level of stuff you might expect. I don't know. Like, I'm expecting steady as she goes. But I guess we'll wait and see. I'm just nervous to say anything because as we speak, it might have already happened.
Yes, we'll keep refreshing the laptops as we sit here and record this episode. But like, speaking of things that may or may not happen and are slightly cryptic, there is a new theory going around that the date for the announcement of Trailer 2 may have already been teased in a GTA Online image. I think that's something that we should discuss. Now, this image that you can see here was posted on November the 1st, which came with the following text. It was a GTA Online community update. First details on an exciting new GTA Online update coming in December, featuring clandestine operations launched from the Darnell Bros garment factory, plus new community challenges, experience improvements, and more. The interesting thing with this image, Dan, is that the moon here that you can see is in its waning gibbous phase, which does occur on November the 22nd of this month. Please discuss your thoughts around those facts.
November the 22nd is a Friday.
Correct.
Which, as we usually talk about, the ideal days for drops are Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's not to say never, it could never be a Friday, but Tuesdays and Thursdays are ideal, so it doesn't quite align with that. We were talking off air where I probably honked at the idea that this might be a sign, but you had suggested that there might be slightly more to this than other such signifiers.
Well, because there is some precedent to this in Rockstar's history. Previously, Trailer 1, if you connect the dots in a very specific way, was teased in a similar way like this last year that did actually turn out to be true. We had this image, which was posted on September the 29th, which again featured the moon. And the cycle of that moon appeared on December the 1st, 2023, which was, as we all know, the day of the announcement for Trailer 1. Now, December the 1st, 2023, Dan, was a Friday. But what happened is that was the announcement of the date of the trailer that was coming next week.
Wow, the announcement of the announcement.
Yes.
Yes.
On the show, obviously, we theorized a few weeks ago that window, November 18th to 22nd, would be a goodest time at any to drop some news. Yeah. The 22nd, which is what that moon phase points to, is another Friday, as you said. But, if you really want to go down the rabbit hole and find some of that meat on the proverbial horse, it could be that they have pointed to November 22nd as the announcement of a coming announcement, which wouldn't be crazy, but it does put them into that following week of like November the 24th, which is like Black Friday, Thanksgiving week, which we didn't explicitly rule out. And if you're announcing something on the Friday that's going to happen on the Tuesday, still gives you a bit of a window.
Black Friday is quite late this year. It's like November the 29th weekend. So it's not impossible. You could do something like 28th-ish. Again, it's just whether you want to be... Again, I don't know if Rockstar care about competing with the noise of anything else. They will not compete with the US election. Even that's bigger than Rockstar. But Black Friday, the thing that would maybe a line about that is if they were saying, and now you can something pre-order, but even that's too soon. And why do it Black Friday? You can do it any time.
Yeah, but I think the 26th still fits within our window, our prediction window.
Yes.
And so an announcement on the 22nd with a push towards something the following week doesn't seem too far out there. All you have to do is, trust the phases of the moon and maybe everything will come true.
And what was the gap between the previous announcement and the actual trailer, which leaked early anyway?
The December the 1st was the announcement. December the 5th was...
So that was
4 days. So it was...
Because it leaked a day early, but it was supposed to be the 5th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that would follow, that would follow a similar pattern.
Yes, it would.
And would allow them to precede expectations for trailer 2, which I think is probably quite wise on their part, because then people can be aware of what it is and what it isn't.
Yeah, and this doesn't even necessarily have to be a trailer announcement. I mean, an announcement for screenshots feels a bit, even for Rockstar, a bit much.
It really does. I mean, if it's like those screenshots they released last time around where it was the person stares at lake.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't expect a press release for that. Even for GTA 6, I wouldn't expect a press release.
No. So I think, if it was going to be something, I guess it would be a trailer. It would be almost a year after the first trailer.
Yeah.
Ties in with all the other beats we've talked about on the show before. I am again, like I always do, getting a little bit excited that this might be true, which is only going to end in disappointment, I'm sure. But yeah, I am crossing all my fingers for that. The date of later on in November 22nd, and let's see what happens.
See what the moon holds for us all.
Now then, let's cover a nice bit of news for PC players. And right at the bottom of that same community update that Rockstar posted on November the 1st, there was a very small but important note that said, there is much, much more still to come, including ongoing weekly special events and bonuses, festive celebrations, gifts, surprises, as well as plans to bring much requested PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S features of GTA Online to the PC platform in the new year. Please stay tuned to Rockstar Games Newswire for all the details. Now, what this says is, although it's not noted officially, we can assume that it's referring to features in the enhanced editions of GTA 5 and Xbox Series consoles that came out in 2022. So thanks for waiting, PC players. So it's only taken 2 years, 2 and a bit years for that to happen. All of these features included the graphical enhancements like ray-traced reflections and shadows, new fire and particle effects. There were some quality of life improvements, a new intro and a tutorial for GTA Online, some vehicle upgrades, animals finally made their way into GTA Online. There was a career builder and more stuff like that. The interesting question here is what this means for GTA 6 or I guess the new versions of GTA Online. And obviously the ultimate goal is for everyone on all platforms to have the same experience all of the time. So if you're playing GTA Online, you're playing the same version as you would on Xbox, you would on PC, you would on PlayStation. In case you move around and you want to get that, you don't want to be missing features on one platform that are not on another one, because then one looks better than the other. My interesting question to throw out here is, could the next version of GTA Online launch across all platforms on the same day, with the single player version of the game coming to PC later? So we do get parity across next gen and PC platforms for online, but they don't get the single player element of GTA 6 Online on PC for another few years, because it takes a while to put all that together.
There's a long and a short answer.
Great. Well,
the short
people
one
are here for the long answer.
I'll get to the long answer. The short answer is no. I cannot see it. It's just giving out some birthday presents a year early. That's you'd have another birthday by then. That's a bad analogy. It's just giving out presents too early, right? And it splits it all up, and I think changes the incentives to be a PC buyer. And then almost, and again, this is down to the dev process and the way they do it. And the bigger question is, what is GTA Online full stop in a world of GTA 6? Like we've talked about on the show, is it intrinsic to the experience? Is it built literally within the same world? Does it dip in, dip out in the same way as GTA 5 single player speaks to GTA Online? Will it be completely detached and standalone? That's the bigger set of questions. Like, what is clear is that the PC release of GTA 6, certainly the single player component, we know is going to be further back. I just don't, I don't see them splitting it up. It's an interesting hypothesis, because I think it's something they could do, but I think it just takes away too much of the, as I say, it's like spoiling what, the joy of GTA 6 on PC will be the best looking, most enhanced, most amazing version, but it almost by definition won't be if it ends up releasing at the same time. And I think their incentive schedule is to, release it on console, do that, and then when eventually a year and a half, whatever down the line, the PC version comes, it will be the ultra settings, ultra version. I don't know how you do that if you've already kind of split the river.
I think the online version is always different anyway, and it's running on the, because it has to have 32 players on the map and all of that kind of stuff. And they've already split GTA Online in this current generation to be a separate purchase. Like you can just buy GTA Online and play it without having the single player at all. Yeah. So it was just a speculative question to throw out to be like, I mean, I think
Do you think? I mean, do you think they could?
There's a world in which I think that could happen, and I think there are definitely a certain number of people that will only play the online anyway, or will play the first couple of missions single player and then just be like, I'm only going to play online. And there will be another whole group of people who only play the single player and don't play the online version that much, or jump into it for an hour and go, nah, it's not for me. I just want to roam around in single player. And I think you probably can split those player bases and not feel the impact too much. The question would be, would a lot of PC players buy just GTA Online if it came with the new version or whatever GTA 6's map of online is, or, extension to the current map? Like, we don't know what that's going to look like, as you said, but...
Well, I think, of course. Well, I mean, they would buy it every time it appears and gets dropped.
Yeah, and I think that's proven out, right? We've seen the release of Red Dead 1 that just came to PC. Finally.
Yeah.
They've picked up the game years later. I think as of time of recording this, looking on like the Steam DB charts, there's about 2,500 people playing that game right now.
Yeah.
About 8.5 of an all-time peak, which you could assume is when it launched. The estimates that it owners on Steam is about 40 to 80k people, which is quite a big jump. But the game is £40, $50, $49.99. By my maths, that makes that game as old as Red Dead 1, still generated $4 million worth of sales. And if you extrapolate that into people who are going to buy GTA 6, you tease them in with online, then go, if you want to play the super high ray traced version, single player version of this world, you only have to wait 1.5 years and you can buy it on PC.
Yeah, I mean, there's some rationale there, and probably more financial rationale. I think the bigger point is it's about Rockstar as a company, what they represent, and this idea of believing in the magic, things being a bit special and unique. And I just think they will want people's first experience of GTA 6 on PC to be this ultra elevated version, and not potentially not compromised is the right word, but it's not quite the right viewing portal to see the GTA world. And assuming again that it's based on the GTA 6 map, it's it lets all the air out of the balloon for me. It's just not as exciting. If you've already been romping around for a year, in the GTA 6 map online, and it's not quite at the visual quality it eventually will be, I think people will still buy it. I just think it takes away the magic from eventually when single player comes out. Plus the fact that, single player will have already existed on console, and most people probably would have gone, do you know what, I can't wait, I'm just going to play it there. Like the reason to hang on for the PC version is because it's the creme de la creme.
Yes, and that is what always has happened, right?
Yeah,
they've done
the ultimate version.
Console versions first, then the PC, like Ultimate Edition. Then eventually those features come to the next version of the console thing that you can buy again.
Yes, exactly.
So I can see like that cycle happening. Of course, I just thought, and people I know are going to call me insane for even suggesting it in the comments, but I thought it's a nice talking point to throw out there. Let us know if you're playing on PC. Would you just play the online version if you could buy it earlier than getting the complete package that came with single player? Like, interested to hear your guys' thoughts.
Yeah, I'd like to know. Like, would you? And then also, do you think they will? Because it's a change of the model. And the model has been quite successful to this point. So, who knows? I think, the past doesn't represent the future, as they say in investing. We'll wait and see. But if I was betting, I would say that no, we'll just have to wait.
All right, so now let's move on and talk about last week's interview, which you did, Dan. It's been picked up by a number of outlets. So thanks to everyone who listened. Thanks to everyone who shared it. Thanks again to Ben for sharing his thoughts with us. People like Dextero picked it up, said a former GTA 6 dev says the game's realism will blow people away. Goes on to quote Ben, who said, I think Rockstar's raised the bar again, just like they always do. I wanted to have a little debrief on the interview because obviously we haven't hung out and spoken about it since you did it.
We haven't wrapped about the interview.
I really enjoyed listening to it. I thought there was some really good stuff in there. There was a couple of points that I'd like to just dive into a bit more. All speculative, of course,
Yes, of course,
like definitely from my side, but probably from the chats we're going to have. I did find it interesting that obviously now he's gone to work in VR to make Dig VR game. You drive a load of diggers around and do some fun things like bowling and that kind of stuff. But one of the reasons, and I'm sure there were many reasons, to leave Rockstar was that he didn't see a VR future, in the plans, which would suggest to me as a listener that they weren't talking about any type of VR for GTA 6. If he was working on it at the time, if he'd expressed his thoughts around, I really want to get into VR, and they were like, well, this might not be an opportunity for this release, but it could be further down the line, or whatever that discussion was. I think it's an interesting point to think about. Would Rockstar be considering a VR version of GTA 6? It feels like no.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it sort of always felt like no.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's not a surprise. They've toyed with it before and, done an LA Noire version and that kind of stuff. But I think if there is ever going to be a VR version of 6, it would, in my mind, be more of like a spin-off add-on to the main game rather than incorporating it into the game itself.
Yeah, I think he obviously didn't, say outright it wasn't there. But in the flow of the conversation, if I recall it correctly, he sort of cited that, he was passionate about VR and found it exciting. And then, he didn't fully get into it. I didn't want to probe too hard about why he left Rockstar. There's probably things he could or couldn't say about why that is. But it was almost implicit that if he was excited about VR, it didn't feel like Rockstar and GTA 6 was going to be the place to explore that. I think that's like you said. Part of that seems sort of obvious because it's one thing alone to launch. We've just debated how they're going to do online. Are they going to launch a PC version? That's a whole nest of complexity. To build an entire VR game on top of that is beyond boggling. So I just think I don't think it was ever on the table. I just think, and to trace through his conversation, he did talk about LA Noire VR, which always felt like a play test, a test bed for is VR a thing we want to be in? Is it a thing we can do more of? Is there a market for it? And I suspect the result of that experiment was, no, not really. And as I thought it was good at, LA Noire VR is a really good experience. I remember playing it and laughing a lot, thinking it was really brilliant. And that was with a game that was kind of done. They just had to reappropriate it for VR, and it was quite a safe experiment. Rockstar have a history of experiments. I guess something like, ping pong.
Yeah, Rockstar's table tennis.
Yeah, which is just a graphics engine test, really. Yeah. And probably the fact they thought, we want to launch a ping pong game. We think it's funny. That was a different era when you could do things like that. You could launch a game at a certain price that was quite limited in its scope. That was before ping pong would be one of 50 side games in a 100-hour adventure. It was a different world, but they did do that as a tech test, and I think that's what LA Noire was a degree of tech test and a market test. I just don't see there's any world where GTA 6 was ever going to be VR ready. Like you said, I just think it stands to reason. So I think that was, probably him tacitly confirming, well, no, it won't be in VR, but of course it wouldn't be anyway.
Yeah.
But again, that's my interpretation and not what he said. I've got to be clear.
Yeah, of course. And we've seen them obviously experiment with things, but now they're just doing it within the game. So, when GTA 5 originally launched, didn't have a first-person mode. Now it does have a first-person mode, and you would expect, or a lot of people would expect, that to carry over into 6. Like, GTA 6 probably going to have a first-person mode, ? Yeah. And if it's got a first-person mode, the VR enthusiast would say, well, if it's already in a first-person mode, that makes it an easier leap to put all of that stuff into a VR.
And this is where we need Ben to jump on and go, it's not that easy, my friend.
What are you saying? You are crazy.
So you could, I think it's about the locomotion within VR is so much more difficult.
Yeah, and it's not as easy as that. Like the first-person mode is obviously easier than just, pressing the VR button. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
But like we've seen them experiment with that. Obviously, we've seen them experiment with like locations like Guarma in Red Dead, when that feels to me like they're experimenting with more tropical locations, which we might end up seeing more of in 6 if we go to some other islands that aren't just Florida. But we will see. Yeah, and I'm very excited to see what experimentations they are doing in 6 when we get to that stage. The other thing I wanted to pick up on was Mount Chiliad. I'm glad we asked them about secrets and Easter eggs.
Yeah.
The response, I think, was fairly expected, but I did think it was interesting that he said, we do sometimes just put things in the game to mess with people.
Yeah.
And that speaks to unsolvable mysteries, which I think, like the theory of Bigfoot in previous GTA games, which then actually did become a real thing later on.
Yeah.
But we are desperate. I am still desperate to get to the bottom of Mount Chiliad and the mural and actually find somebody who worked on it to either say this was meant to be part of something bigger, or we just thought it would be funny to put this up here and see people for 10 plus years lament over what it means and what it could do and all of that kind of stuff. Like, somebody knows if it was a intentional thing or part of a bigger thing that ended up getting cut or something.
What I got from the conversation a lot is this sense of that we know to be true, but it's nothing to hear him say it. Making a game like GTA is a Leviathan process with hundreds, if not thousands of people. So people work very much in neat little silos, and only a handful of people are manipulating the big picture. So some of the stuff that's there, it didn't sound like he even knew who would have cooked up that Mount Chiliad bit. That just wasn't his department.
Yeah.
So he'd worked on something else, and that wasn't it. What I did think was revealing, though, is when he talked about the Red Dead Redemption mission, where they built an entire little settlement just for people who'd accidentally gone wrong on the main mission, and you might never have found it had you not gone the wrong way. And that level of detail is, I guess, why we love Rockstar, but it's also like mad, because you can imagine someone like your online manager saying, could we just make an entire settlement full of people with this, and we think probably 5% of people are going to see it, 1% of people are going to see it.
Yeah.
And then they do, because it's Rockstar, and that stuff gets worked through. That stuff that's why we love Rockstar, but it just feels mad to hear it said out loud.
Yeah, I mean, that's why those games are so good, right? Because
of course,
it's like you said, they designed story mission elements that hardly anyone is going to see, but it's creating that living world that if you do follow that person who's driving the truck that you're meant to ambush, but you don't ambush it, the truck actually goes somewhere. It doesn't get to the hill and then disappear. Like, you can actually track people's lives as much as the game will allow you to. And I think we're only going to see that expanded as we get into GTA 6.
Well, exactly that. And I think that was the interesting, not so much a revelation, but almost him confirming what we all want to be true. So we talked about the idea of how deep Red Dead goes and how persistent that universe is. When I asked for him to say, could you say something that would be interesting to the GTA 6 audience? How should they set their expectations? He did nothing to dampen expectations. I think he was only saying, really, you look at things like that, you look at the levels of realism, they're just doubling down on everything like that. So that to me felt like an exciting quasi-confirmation that this game is going to be deep like you can't believe. And that I was surprised actually sort of gave so much, to give so much that was affirmative rather than going, well, I wouldn't know because I left a while ago and things might have changed. Like, he was almost saying, believe the hype, it's real, it's going to be super deep. I got a genuine sense of affirmation from it, I think.
Yeah. When he said, the idea with all of Rockstar's games and GTA games in particular is to always go bigger and better. Like, if you're like, what can people expect? And if he's saying, well, look at all the games throughout GTA's history, it's always gone bigger and better.
Yeah.
You're like, well, 5 was pretty big and good. So a bigger and better version of that, coupled with the generational changes that we've got, a new generation of consoles. It's 10 years plus after GTA 5.
Yeah.
It starts to get really exciting.
Maybe the car refueling dream is real. That's my dreadful takeaway from that.
Car refueling is happening.
One thing before we leave, I thought was fascinating was about how mission design works. And he was saying in his role as a designer, essentially I guess it was the houses once upon a time, right? They would have the story. And he initially talked about, the story comes first and we hash out the story and we know broadly what we want to do and where we want to take the characters. And I had to sort of almost stop and go, doesn't the world come first? And he was like, oh yeah, of course, like the world. So that's what I'd read elsewhere and heard elsewhere. They always design. I think Dan Houser had said this in an interview with The Guardian. We always design the world first, then the story, the characters.
Yeah, they pick a location first.
Yeah. So I think he did confirm that, but I had to wind back just to ask him to say it. But then when he talked about as a designer, his job was basically to pitch solutions to the story challenge. So it'd be like, we need to get this character from here to there, and the mission's about you've got to get this item. Give me 3 to 6 different ways you can do this that are fun. And then the designers, it sounded like, were giving some license to almost introduce plot elements or characters that made that more exciting. So I think they were free to pitch incidental characters who might be a good foil for that particular mission or against the character they were playing against. And I guess his job was probably, a study in rejection, where you pitch thousands of solutions over the time of the game and a handful get through. And this is true to the story we've often told about the apocryphal story of people taking screenshots for, I think that was screenshots of ping pong, right?
Yeah.
And Rockstar rejected thousands of them. Part of that feels like affectation, but it's that quest for perfectionism. That felt real. And I think in a truer sense, that probably would be why I've seen a lot of people in the comments, and thank you for all the kind comments. I've seen a lot of people in comments saying things like, whoa, why would he leave Rockstar to go and make a VR game, Dig VR, which does look really fun, but it's not GTA 6, right? It's something very different. And I guess my take would be because maybe he doesn't have to pitch 100 failed versions of a very by-the-by side mission. He gets some agency.
Yes.
I think if your entire life, for a decade plus he was at Rockstar, and if you've worked in such a big machine, it's whether you want to be the captain of a smaller boat or king of the engine room or whatever the right analogy would be. And
let's say that's the right analogy.
That's the right. Of all the terrible analogies I've used today, that's not the worst.
I'm pretty sure the king of the engine room is a real position on a boat.
Yeah.
Let's go, can you find the king?
So if any kings of engine rooms are listening, do let us know how it feels as opposed to being the captain on a smaller ship. My feeling would be eventually you get a tiny bit fed up. So I think you want to feel that agency and, I'll take it further to steer the boat where you want to go. And I think with Dig VR, he can finally unleash those dreams.
Yeah, I think, as you've said, it's a massive difference between working at Rockstar, which is a massive multi-billion-dollar company, to where he is now, where it's a much smaller team. They can be a much more agile, a meeting that they can probably have around one desk rather than with 30 people on a video call and having to talk to people in New York, having to talk to people in Los Angeles, having to talk to people in Edinburgh, trying to work out all of those schedules and then have a meeting because you need to set up another meeting. And all of that stuff is far more reduced at a smaller company. It's much easier.
It's not the good bit. And anyone who works in a large organization will empathize with that and say endless meetings and placation and mediation is not the good bit. So yeah, I can understand why he might have done it. And he's done his time. And I guess that's it. He's done a couple of big GTAs. Then you go, what's the next thing? To make another one.
Yeah.
And as bigger and better as it is, fundamentally, it's a similar challenge and maybe just sort of different challenge. But I've got to thank Ben for his openness. He talked really frankly about what it was like to work there. I thought it was really interesting hearing him talk about how he got into the industry. And I guess how he felt like he got quite lucky to get in, almost like a competition winner. But
straight out of uni into Rockstar. What a journey that is.
Just unbelievable. And that's the sort of thing that my own children might say, where they go, I'm just going to get a job being Mr. Minecraft or something.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, all right. I don't think it's quite that easy. But yeah, I think if, you're good enough and you put yourself in the right shop window, there's a chance. And like I guess Ben is maybe the exception to the rule, but can be done.
Well, I think that would just about cover it for this week's episode. If you do have any other questions, things you'd like us to follow up on, please put a comment below. If you're listening on YouTube, get in touch with us on Twitter at GTAVOclock or drop us an email, gtavio'clock@gmail.com. We will see how this investor call goes. Keep an eye out on the moon and see what kind of phase it's in, seeing if it's going to drop a trailer. And we will be back next Wednesday for another episode of GTA 6 o'clock.